Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to this edition of Midweek Geek. I am Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator. And after the house cleaning here, by the way, I timestamp all these episodes. You can see in the description below, and probably before the video even starts, the timestamps of when I get into the brass tacks of content of these videos. So that's to A, keep the haters at bay with their haterade, and B, more importantly, actually, not jokingly, it's a service to you, the listener, and you, the viewer, whether you're listening to the podcast or you're watching this on YouTube. The timestamps are always in the description to tell you when I get onto the subjects at hand. And this week we're going to be talking about water actually discovered on Mars, but the bulk of this Midweek Geek is going to focus on the ongoing MacBook Pro issue and whether or not the software patch Apple has released has actually fixed the issue. So if you want to jump right ahead to that, just click on the timestamp there. And other than that, we'll get on. We'll just get on with this. We'll just get on with it. Subscribe to the podcast, Geek Therapy Radio with Johnny Hamburger. You can get on Spreaker, iHeartRadio app, iTunes. I use it on Pocket Cast. I think Google Podcasts is new now. You can get there. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching here on YouTube. You can click the bell icon if you want. I'm not going to force that down anyone's throat. I mean, that's up to you. Even subscribing is up to you, but I would appreciate it either way. I'm just not forcing the whole bell icon thing. You're also never going to see a sponsor this creator button underneath my videos. I work in radio. I'll get my money other ways. But let's move right on to the subjects at hand real quick. We finally discovered real water on Mars. There's ice caps on Mars. Yes, that ice is real water, but we found real liquid water underneath one of the ice caps on the South Pole. We've discovered it. I had anything to do with it. Well, I guess my tax dollars kind of did. A lake of water has been discovered 0.9 miles below the surface of the ice. So what is that, 1.5 kilometers roughly? And this lake of liquid water underneath the ice cap is 12 miles long. And that's really cool. That has major implications to the search for life, at least on Mars, because where there's liquid water, there could be life. Now, here's the thing, though. This water is super cooled. It is very, very cold, likely due to the pressure of the ice on top of it and surrounding it. When water is under high pressure, it significantly lowers the freezing temperature. So this water could be, 90 degrees below zero, but still liquid. There's also chemicals in the water like sodium and other things that are aiding into decreasing that freezing temperature, but still, nonetheless, liquid water officially found on Mars. You bet your bottom dollar NASA is already, day one, thinking of sending rovers there and little submarines there to collect data from this water. That's a massive, monumental task. But I mean, just even forgetting about getting the probes there, you would have to dig down almost a mile into the ice, make an ice tunnel a mile long on Mars, billions of miles away from Earth, and have everything work. So the task is monumental, but we know the water is there officially, so that's huge news for any of my science geeks. I know there's a lot of you. I'm one of them. I just talked on... When did I talk? Last week, I believe, of actual Geek Therapy Radio, the broadcast. I talked about astronomy and that getting into astronomy, buying telescopes and stuff isn't nearly as expensive as you think. If you can set aside even $100, even $50, you can get a nice little tabletop scope, 4 inches or so, give you a nice view of the planets and some nebula, star clusters and things. So astronomy is cheaper than you think to get into. So really cool. Discovered actual liquid water on Mars. That's really neat. Mars does not have a protective magnetic shield, and it's constantly bombarded for that fact. It's constantly bombarded by radiation from the sun and the cosmos. But maybe being so far under the ice would help with that. I don't know. Will they discover life down there? I don't know. 12-mile long lake, maybe some microbes. That'd still be really neat. But let's move on to the bulk of what this video is. And this is the third time I've been recording this today. This is the third video I've recorded. I haven't uploaded any of the other things. I've been waiting till the end of the day pretty much here in Houston to do an official video on this because this subject is so changing. It's so ever evolving. It's not yet beating a dead horse, and that is the MacBook Pro 15's throttling issues, especially on the i9, the 2018 MacBook Pro 15. All versions of the MacBook Pro, the 13 and 15, all different variants, have throttling, and throttling is normal with any thin and light device. So in rendition 3 of this video, I've already been recording for like an hour total, but in rendition 3 of this video, we've finally seen actual results from this patch that Apple has released, the software patch, firmware update. We've seen post-update results on the MacBook Pro 15s, including the infamous i9, and guess what? They're great. Their results are really good, and I want to give some props. I want to give a lot of props, actually, to Apple. I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm just a get-what-you-pay-for fanboy. If you're spending up to $6,700 on a laptop, you should get all the performance that you are not only expecting, but performance as advertised, and that wasn't happening with the MacBook Pro. So there is one caveat to this I'll get to after this little segment, this little part here. Post-patch, we are now achieving base clock. I don't have a MacBook Pro. I can't afford a MacBook Pro. All the research, but all the YouTubers, you can find it. I'll put a link to the video right up here proving it. We are now maintaining base clock of 2.9 gigahertz under full 100% CPU load. That's really great. Now, jury's still out as far as synthetic tests. That's taxing the GPU and CPU simultaneously. They share heat pipes inside the MacBook Pro. If the CPU is going 100% and the GPU is going 100%, can it still maintain that 2.9 gigahertz? As of now, just on the CPU and Cinebench R15, it's staying stable at 3 gigahertz, which is a far cry from the stable 2.2 gigahertz pre-patch that Dave Lee was showing in his video. Here, if you're watching on YouTube, I just pointed up to the top of the screen. You can see the card there. That's good. All my argument is just make it sustain base clock. No one would be arguing about throttle gate or raising hell about throttle gate if it just maintained base clock, which it didn't. Now, post-patch, apparently it does. Here's the caveat with that. Look at those temperatures. In between 90, 92, and 100 degrees Celsius. That is the max thermal limit of that chip. Those VRMs regulating the voltage of that chip are screaming. The VRMs are screaming. They are just maxed out. They are hot, hot, hot. So what this patch was able to do was enable the maintaining of base clock under 100% load, but it's still at darn near and at the thermal limit of the chip. So here's all I'm saying. Back up your data. With any device, you're supposed to back up your data, but especially the 2018 MacBook Pro with the storage soldered onto the motherboard. Once those VRMs go, and they very well may within the next year, they are operating at absolute peak, just peak temperatures, those things are going to go. It's a matter of time before those things go. They are not designed to maintain that. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. There's a margin of error, but not a margin of error. There's a threshold. There's an envelope at which they can perform. And I'm not saying they're going to fail tomorrow, but I was expecting with this patch, I would have been truly happy with this patch if it was able to maintain base clock at. I'll just be very generous with it. If it can maintain base clock at or below 85 degrees Celsius, that would have been ideal. That would have been kind of an ideal thermal solution, an ideal thermal design, but it's not. It is hitting that base clock in this, but basically the patch is allowing it. The patch is allowing it to stay near 100 degrees Celsius in order to maintain that base clock. That's begging for trouble. Whew, that is walking a hardware tightrope. And again, since your storage is soldered onto that motherboard, once that motherboard goes, all of your data is going with it. It will be nearly impossible to recover your data at that point. I say nearly impossible because really at that point, I'm not saying it's impossible to recover the data, but it is cost prohibitive to the average consumer. So if you're working on your next, brilliant YouTube video and your laptop, your MacBook Pro finally cooks itself, which it will eventually, bouncing out constant renders day after day, 100C day after day. Living on the edge. Living on the edge. That song comes to mind. Back up your data. It's going to cost so much money to recover your data from a soldered on solid state drive. So much money. It costs a lot of money to recover data. Let's say you have a house fire and you want to recover the data from your burned up optical hard disks. That's so unbelievably expensive. A major corporation can do that no problem. $5,000 to recover an expense report, chump change. You just spent up to $6,700 on your computer. Okay, let's be even more generous than that. You just spent $2,700, $2,800 to get into the MacBook Pro universe, and now your motherboard's cooked and all your data's gone, but you really need something off of there because you haven't backed up, you haven't got cloud storage, which is worst case scenario. Yes, I'm painting worst case scenario. You just spent almost $3,000. You're going to spend another few $1,000s to recover your data? Huh. With other devices, if the motherboard cooks, you can just simply take the hard drive out, plug it into a USB converter or something, plug it into a different system, get your data. It doesn't care. It's so easy. It's not soldered onto the motherboard. So the patch fixes the speed and it fixes the throttling technically, but you are living on the edge now, just the bleeding, boiling edge of that thermal design. Now, if you're the type of person to buy a new MacBook Pro every single year, which I know a lot of Apple users are, they don't care. They'll shell out $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 every single year for it. Maybe you don't care. This is probably not going to affect you. But if you're going to keep, let's say you're a college student. Let's say you're going up to college this year, and you ask your parents, or you saved up your money and you buy a MacBook Pro. It's very highly unlikely it's going to last you through 4 years of school. 100C export every day, man. Then again, if you're just writing papers on it, if you're just using your $3,000 MacBook Pro to do a job that a $200 laptop could do, you might be fine for 4 years. Why are you getting a MacBook Pro? Just saying, this patch does fix the speed issues, but it doesn't fix the temperature issue. But major props to Apple for listening to us. I was even accused of hating on Apple too much, of clickbaiter video when I said the 2018 MacBook Pro is a quote-unquote scam. There's still a grain of truth to that. There's still a little grain of truth to that. I'm glad, though, that this software patch is able to address it, and I'm glad that Apple listened to Dave Lee. I'm glad it listened to Jonathan Morrison. I'm glad it listened to us in the tech universe and did something that Apple doesn't usually do. They addressed the problem and they apologized for it. Holy crap, they apologized for it. Instead of, do you remember back when was it the iPhone 4, iPhone 4S, maybe it was a different model, but people were complaining that they were getting bad reception, and Apple's response was, well, you're holding it wrong. The response was to blame the user. When we were hitting these throttling issues, so many Apple apologists said, well, if you weren't exporting in Premiere Pro, it wouldn't throttle. What does optimized software have to do with thermal throttling? Nothing. That's not the point. The point is the thermal design. And as evidenced by this patch, so far as of July 25th, so far as evidenced by this patch, they've fixed the throttling issue by just allowing it to hit 100 degrees and stay there pretty much. Woo, bleeding edge, but I'm repeating myself now. It's very risky. If you're a content creator, heavy user, a professional who would buy something called the MacBook Pro, if you're a professional that does heavy tasks, back up your data. Beware. You're hitting 100C every day, constantly every day. That's begging for trouble. But props to Apple for addressing it. Props to Apple for admitting to it. Please now listen to us, Apple. Just make the 2019 a little bit thicker. Just a little bit thicker to house an appropriate cooling solution. No more. Don't share 2 heat pipes between the GPU and CPU. Give it separate. Give maybe 1 extra heat pipe to the CPU or something. They can share it, but just give a little bit extra beef to the areas of cooling where it needs it. Maybe put thermal pads on the VRMs. Possibly better thermal paste. I know that's asking a lot. Apple is not the only one that's guilty of using, I almost used the S word here, but I can't say it because this is family friendly and might go on the radio, even though it's Midweek Geek. Usually my Midweek Geek stuff doesn't go over the air. That's only for Geek Therapy Radio, the official podcast that drops on Friday and then airs on Saturday nights. Anyways, I almost said the S word. Crappy thermal paste. Every manufacturer, one of the first things I do when I get a new laptop is slap new thermal paste on there and undervolt it. Can you undervolt the MacBook Pro? That would help. That sure would help things to undervolt it. I'm not sure. Maybe you can. I'm sure you can. I'm sure there's some way to do it. But when someone, Joe Schmo, is in there buying a $3,000 laptop, it's ridiculous to expect them to put new thermal paste on it or add thermal pads to the VRMs or do anything under the hood. When you're spending that kind of money, it should just work out the box. It shouldn't need any patches. It shouldn't be hitting 100C the whole time. The whole time. Underload the whole time. But what do you think? Comments below are always welcome. Maybe if I'm missing something major here, comment below. I'll put another card up right here explaining what Geek Therapy Radio is all about. It means sometimes I can be wrong about stuff. Again, this is the 3rd time I'm recording today because this story keeps changing. So comment below if you agree, disagree, maybe some new information. This is a community where we come in and share information with each other. Like I said, I'm the mental curator. That doesn't mean I'm an expert in any one area. I'm just curating you through this museum of geek subjects, whether it's cars, airplanes, computers, whatever it is. So right now we're just exploring the MacBook Pro from the aspect of a consumer. So, and arguably as a content creator. But if you have any new information that we need to know, please, but for the love of God, put it below. Let us know it. Other than that, be good to each other. We can't really change. We don't feel like we can change what's happening in our government. This is not a political show. We kind of feel helpless to what's going on in the rest of the world, But what we can do is affect our own world around us just simply by being good to each other. And it all starts by being good to yourself. Embrace your inner geek. Maybe you really like knitting. Embrace knitting, embrace embroidering, embrace your music, embrace your PC building, embrace your Mac. If you're a Mac geek, embrace it. This MacBook Pro stuff should really kind of get your attention, and you should don't apologize for Apple here. Let's see past the rose-colored glasses. Let's make sure that the 2019 MacBook Pro can adequately cool whatever processor they put in it. If that happens, then I'll probably buy one. But back to my point, be good to yourself, be good to those around you, embrace your inner geek. We're all geeks about something. My name's Johnny Hemberger. I've been your mental curator. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss anything. The actual podcast drops on Friday. I do 2 podcasts per week, Midweek Geek, which you're watching and listening to right now, and I do the regular Geek Therapy Radio podcast that drops on Friday. Then it airs Saturdays here on KPRC 950 AM in Houston. That's all. Just be good to each other. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.